Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block and today's segment of 495 Metro. We are your hosts, Ed and Trudy Richardson. We have a real treat for you today. Today we have one of the founding members of Kruize Kontrhl Band Live, a musician, healthcare manager, community activist, and author of the book New Normal. The DMV is his home. In the studio is the one and only Will Bonnette. Will, tell the audience a little bit about your company.
Yourself and your company.
Well, I do a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
I currently work in healthcare, and I am a senior manager at an organization called Life Enhancement Services that provides mental health interventions to people in the community,
Mm-hmm.
in the district.
Mm-hmm.
I teach in a counseling certification program for people who want to become certified addictions counselors. I wrote a book last year for another organization that I worked with that focused on the impact of COVID and the people, how it affected behavioral health. It's called Behavioral Health in the New Normal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's available if you want to go take a look at it. And I also produced, worked on a project that produced a documentary on COVID and the impact in the district.
Mm-hmm. So, as I hear, you're very community.
Oh, I'm a community guy. I will do anything to help the community. That's where my passion is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a product of the community. You know, Washington, D.C. has a very diverse and long history of community.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, having worked for Afrocentric, several Afrocentric companies,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just big on culture,
Mm-hmm.
especially the culture that you find in Washington, D.C. area.
Mm-hmm. As we talked in our last session about the band Kruize Kontrhl, which you're one of the founding members,
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to ask you some questions about that. But before I ask you about that, tell me some of your earlier experiences in the music industry.
How much time you got?
Yeah, I got about 2 minutes.
You know, I'm from Washington, D.C. I started playing in a gospel choir. That was my way of convincing my mother to let me buy a drum set. I was probably 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I never looked back. I played with a lot of cats in the 70s. And then in D.C., it used to be that, you know, every neighborhood had a band, right? And you know, I came out of the Petworth area. And this is before go-go. I'm talking about when, you know, groups like Leadhead and, there's so many of them. LUV, Leadhead, Aggression, The Shadows, you know, Black Heat.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these bands produced distance. They produced music. And that made a lasting impression on me. So I became a music junkie probably in high school. I'd go to places like the Cellar Door and hang out and see if I could catch cats like George Duke, Alphonse Mouzon. I was blessed to be able to see people like Elvin Jones, Dexter Gordon, Betty Carter. I was a kid.
So through these experiences, you fell in love with the live band experience.
Absolutely. Music to me is so much. It's not a thing. It's in a lot of ways it's God's voice.
Mm-hmm.
We take our creativity and we use it to express musically to touch other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know,
the community.
Absolutely. And the Washington D.C. community is very special. You know, I'm a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, drums were banned during slavery, except for in areas like, you know, Brazil, and New Orleans, where they had absentee landowners.
And I'm going to touch on that. You said, so you started out, when you started your actual performance career, you started out as a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I know in Kruize Kontrhl, you're the Conga player.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you transfer from drums to congas, and why?
As far as drumming goes, I just didn't feel challenged anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was young, I was playing some avant-garde jazz stuff. I was following guys like Tim Ironman and East Coast Offering and all the great drummers, Alphonse Mouzon, Lenny White, Elvin Jones, Billy Cobham. I would go see these cats and emulate them.
Mm-hmm.
And then music kind of changed.
Mm-hmm.
And the disco era came along, and then hip hop came along. And don't get me wrong, I love hip hop, right? But the focus went from the music to the mic.
Mm-hmm.
So before I said, every neighborhood had a band. Now every neighborhood has a rapper,
a DJ,
or a DJ, exactly. And it's changed somewhat. And a lot of cats go into the studio and they create a product. That doesn't mean they're a musician.
Mm-hmm.
They're an artist. They're creative as all outdoors.
But the musicianship is already there for them in the the mixing and the board that they have. So they don't have a skill on a instrument.
That's correct.
They have a skill.
Correct. They have skills in other areas that probably pays a lot more money than what you make as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
But as a musician, learning how to play as part of your craft, and then connecting it to the culture and to the history and to the community. Like in Washington D.C., go-go is the culture.
It is.
Of the DMV, and it's the beat. It's the beat. To me, it resonates with people of color who settled in this community. And we've, created a new art form in that regard. You go to Memphis, they juking. If you go to New Orleans, they're doing, something else. And, that's
each community has
every community
has their own sound. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I heard through the grapevine that you buy congas.
Oh my God.
Like a woman who has a shoe fetish buys shoes.
I do
Is
have
that
a fashion.
a myth or a fact?
That's a fact. That's a fact. My passion for the community and passion for music and life experiences, I've gone through a lot. I'm 65 years old, and as far as I'm concerned, part of history and acknowledging history and honoring, your craft is part of, represented by what you plan on. If you ain't gonna sound good if you ain't got good equipment.
So would you say you have over 5 sets of congas? I hear laughter.
All right, the show's going now.
In the background.
Am I being implicated here?
Yes.
Oh, we're gonna call in.
Absolutely.
We're gonna call in witnesses.
I will. I do. I was talking to a cat on the West Coast, and he's into the drum trade, and he said to me, he said he had a drum that he was selling, and it's about $1,000, right? And conga, mid-level, is usually around anywhere from $300 to $800. So $1,000 is kind of a lot. So I'm like, why do I want to put that kind of money out for one drum? Because for real, I want 5 drums. So, if I commit to that 1,000, that means I'm probably going to have to figure out how I'm going to get the others to match. Because I want a full set. That's just who I am.
You don't want mismatch.
No. It's like somebody wearing mismatched shoes. Both shoes might be nice, but
not your style.
they look better
when
when they match.
Right.
So I'm big on that. And one of the things I pride myself in is kind of being a historian and knowing about drums, and the value of drums. It's kind of like old cars. I love the cars from the 50s and 60s. And if you can find one with the original parts, and it's the same thing with drums. You know, if you can get a requena from Cuba, those drums are 6,000 plus a piece.
Wow.
If you can find one outside of a museum.
Does each one of those sets bring a different sound depending on what you're trying to play?
Absolutely. Some of the salsa drums by LP, they have they're 29 inches generally. They have a beautiful sound. Some of the mid-level drums, like in this community, Matador is really a drum that a lot of congaleros play, because you can make it sound as good as anything that's out there. Some people prefer wood drums. Some people prefer fiberglass.
Do you have a favorite set of congas?
No, I love them all. I've got a set of Valgies, the LP Valgies, and they're oh my God, this.
So let me jump in here, because this is kind of, we're letting people who don't know us know kind of like what we're about, who we are. We're musicians and we're community oriented and that kind of thing. But my question for you, which I want our audience to know, is how long have you been playing, and are you self-taught?
I am. It's a little bit of both. I actually was a little dishonest. When I first started playing music, I was playing a recorder in the 6th grade.
A recorder?
A recorder, which is a little flute thing, right?
Oh, you're never going to live that down.
In the 7th grade, I joined the youth orchestra at our junior high school.
Okay.
And I was playing percussion. So I've been playing drums since I've been about 16 years old. I started taking up congas probably about, 5-6 years ago.
Oh.
6 years maybe. But it's kind of like horseback riding. The first time I went horseback riding, I fell in love. So it's the same thing with congas. To be able to put out a sound, what I love the most is performing. Because when you perform, you can show off. You can play the stuff you've been working on and make it fit within a framework that express a sound.
So basically, the congas and you become one. But I'm going to have to cut you off, and we'll pick this back up. It's time for a short break. We will return after these important messages.
Absolutely.
He's the face of our future, tutoring and mentoring tomorrow's leaders. She's the face of hope, helping communities recover from devastating disasters. He's the face of independence, making sure that those who need assistance can remain in their own homes. These are the faces of experience, making a difference for generations. This is Senior Corps. Visit nationalservice.gov. This message brought to you by the Corporation for National and Community Service.
Welcome back. You are watching Rock Your Block in today's segment of 495 Metro. I'm back with my special guest, Will Bonnette, one of the founding members of Kruize Kontrhl Band Live. Prior to the break, we were discussing the founding of Kruize Kontrhl Band Live and Will's first musical instrument. Will, continue.
Well,
you would play the recorder.
Let me jump in here,
okay,
because we got to clear something up, because there was a segment that I did where I mentioned Marcus Miller playing on a certain album, and Will was were you an A&R guy at that time?
I worked for CBS Records. I got records on the radio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so tell me, what was the album that I heard Never Too Much on?
Never Too Much came off of Luther's first album on Epic. Okay, he played with a group called Change, and that was on Atlantic.
So I had the band right?
You had the band right. But that particular song came off of his debut epic album, and I was blessed to be able to work on that project. So yeah.
So the only thing I can remember is that Marcus Miller killer bass line. But more about you, my friend. Of all the professional conga players, do you have a favorite?
I have lots of favorites.
Can we have just like 2 or 3?
Well, to quite honestly, you know, I'm from DC, so I really love like some of the DC conga players. So when you talk about who plays congas in DC, you got to talk about Go-Go Mickey.
Of course.
You got to talk about Smoke. You got to talk about Sauce. You got, you know, Bo Beatty. There's so many guys. You know, I like what the sound that's coming out of some of these new bands. You know, Black Alley, the way they did the congas and the percussion, they took it to another level. But, you know, when you talk about guys like Go-Go Mickey and Smoke, can't nobody touch them on a local or, as far as I'm concerned, an international level. These guys are the best at what they do.
So as the congalero for Kruize Kontrhl, I'd like to ask another question of you, which is, have you applied any of their techniques, and do you find yourself incorporating and mixing their style with your own from time to time?
Absolutely. I think the mark of any musician is to be able to develop different types of skills and blend it into your playing. So for me, you know, like Carlos Santana is everything. You know, I talk about local guys, but you know, Carlos Santana's music. Who was his
congalero, by the way?
It was Raul Rical, and Raul Rical passed about 2 years ago.
Wow.
You know, early on it was Chipito. There's another cat, I can't think of his name.
It wasn't Ayrton, was it?
No. Ayrton played with he had his own thing. But he was a hell of a percussionist as well. He's from Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So how in the world does a congalero work with an R&B band? How does that work?
Easy. it's like, you know.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was the
coffee, cream and sugar.
With a donut, right?
With the donut, and you just blend it.
So what style of music would you say is your, you know, is the most favorite for you to perform? You like performing? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know. I want to play music that people listen to, that they're inspired by, that they can dance to, that they can have fun to.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I want to play. That's what we do.
So with that being said, because I want to leave some more time for you to answer some more questions, but I told my story of how we got together. But that was my perspective. So how did you happen to become one of the founding members of Kruize Kontrhl Band Live?
I had decided, years ago I was in the music business on the business end. You know, I was a young cat. I was working for CBS Records. I got that job, and what I found was the industry kind of sucked.
What do you mean? I mean
the drug use.
Okay.
It was just
the people. It wasn't CBS. It was just the people that were
That's
involved.
correct.
Yeah.
It wasn't CBS. It was the industry itself.
The culture of the industry. Yeah.
It was a very dirty business.
Okay.
It's cleaned up a lot, and I mean, just look at it. Musicians are now getting paid better. They're getting their royalties, whereas before they got screwed. It's a rough business. I was too young for it. I wasn't ready for it. And so I went away from it. I got into behavioral health and helping people turn their lives around because, I was able to turn my life around. You know, the music business almost killed me. My boss turned me on to heroin, and I'm not going to blame him. But, thank God I was able to stop using. I've been clean now 36 years.
So you come back to now, and you got this idea and this band. I was actually first playing for you and your band. You had a little startup thing you were doing. So how did this morph into Kruize Kontrhl for you? What made you say, yeah, I want to be a part of that?
I wanted to play again. It had been years since I had played, and I had a drum set in my basement, and I was working out. And one of my friends, I ran into him, and we started talking, and he said something about, man, let's just do this one more time. I was probably 60 at the time. One more time, and hell yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So we started a band, and it was kind of rough in the beginning, because the thing about a band isn't about musicianship. It's about emotional growth. Because these are people you're supposed to gel with, that you call your family, that you're connected to, that you work with. And you have to, your values and your concept, your ideas, they have to be in alignment. Your principles have to be in alignment. And if everybody's in alignment, it's like a flower. It just blooms. It just grows. And I think that takes years for people to develop. Some groups have been gifted. They've been playing, you look at bands like the Ohio Players, like they've been around for 50, 60 years. Those cats, from day one, they had that synergy, right? That's what I want. That's what I've always aspired to, whether it's music, whether it's helping the community. I think it's really about what you want your legacy to be.
So Trudy, would you I know we had a couple of questions that we had teed up for Will. Would you mind if I ask him this one, because I think he's going to talk quite a bit on this one?
Okay.
You can close this out. Hey, listen, I hope the audience is enjoying this, because this is very interesting. We're talking about our band members, why we're involved in the community, what we're about, and we are fortunate to have you, and we're fortunate to be able to do this thing together. It's really a labor of love. The question that I have, your role in Kruize Kontrhl Band is a percussionist. You play congas, but more than that, for anybody that's watching right now, any drummers, any other percussionists, what tips or advice would you give someone who is considering joining or starting a band?
It's funny that you should mention it, because when I remember I was probably 20 years old, and I had an opportunity to meet Max Roach. Max Roach, if you don't know, was a drummer that played with guys like Duke Ellington, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis. He's in the record books. This guy was probably the classiest drummer that ever lived. But I got a chance to talk to him, and I said, I asked him, what advice can you give a young cat like me who's trying to get into the game? And he said, Will, I never stopped. I said, what do you mean? He said, when I grew up, I was never the best drummer. There were some other cats who were better than me, but I looked up, and they went and got married or got a job, and they started working and forgot about playing. They driving cabs, they doing other things. But me, I kept playing, and I never stopped. So I'm gonna tell a young cat, right? Don't stop. This is your passion. Like, this is gonna be your passion. And you can look up 20, 30, 40 years later, and it'll still be your passion. That's God's gift. And if you truly value some of the tools that you have, you want to use them. And what better way to use them than to touch other people? Like, that's what we do.
That's what we do.
Music is more than a job. It's not a job. It's more than a lifestyle.
Yeah. I would say that
Yeah.
for some of us, the business of music is totally different than what happens, what the people see when you're performing and everything. And there's this part, and you mentioned it, you touched on it, about the business of music, how it can be really rough, because as artists, we're sensitive, and we, you know, when something goes sideways, we don't always react well. But if we can maintain that passion, to your point, and just keep playing, you know what I mean? We can meet up with our destiny.
Keep playing and you grow,
Yeah.
and you learn, and you incorporate it,
Yeah.
and you touch others, and I love it.
I hate to cut you off, but as they say, all good things must come to an end. We are very blessed to have you here, and Ed, both of you sharing your musical experience and telling us so much wonderful stuff about the band Kruize Kontrhl and the 7 other members. And what I've learned today is that music is personal and that it's created from the soul. And the both of you and 7 other members come together, present a beautiful package, an experience to your community and your audience where you inspire, bring joy, and good times. So both of you continue what you're doing, and hopefully we'll be able to see you again. Well, it's that time again. If you have any questions about today's segment, please see the information scrolling below. You have been watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of 495 Metro. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.